Hi there, it's that nerd Kaizen, aka Bag Watcher Extraordinaire. There's this comic book YouTuber who has some of the worst takes I've ever seen when it comes to TV shows, movies, comic books, everything.
So Absolute Superman just dropped. It's not good writing, it's not unique, and this entire universe is a mediocre piece of commie garbage. When you say I'm scared of black people, newsflash, you illiterate troglodyte. Everybody is. I'm not gonna name names, but big YouTubers in the anti-woke sphere. Where the hell are you? Daredevil Born Again, let me repeat it one last time. It's not a solid show. It's not an 8 out of 10. It's not like a slightly less good version of the Netflix show. It's just plain woke trash.
I disagree with 99% of the things that he says. We'll get into that 1% later. But spoiler alert, it's about race swapping, specifically like black people for redheads, you know? It kind of just feels like Hollywood is lazy and being weird at the same time, because another word for redhead is ginger. Rearrange those letters, you get the N-word, hard R. At first it was like a coincidence, now it feels like it's on purpose. Like some weirdos in Hollywood are just laughing in the background saying, hey look, we hired another N-word who we're just gonna set up to fail, you know? And it really sucks too, that Hollywood and writers are just okay with race swapping instead of establishing like original characters and new stories, you know? It feels like Disney and comic book companies just forgot about other cool characters like Static Shock or those two Australian aboriginals who can teleport, but like it's more than just teleporting. They legitimately speak with the universe. Gateway and Manifold specifically, who can like teleport so much cosmic energy into his hands that he can just eviscerate people. Like, these comic panels are so freaking cool, but we have yet to see the likes of Static Shock, Manifold, or Gateway in the movies. And like, look, I get it, they're not that popular of characters when you're comparing them to Superman and Batman, but I feel like those stories have been told so much. And Iron Man kind of proves that you can have a B/C list character become the face of a franchise. And I think a lot of people want new stories to be told. Me personally, my favorite movie since Endgame was Shang-Chi, and that thing came out ages ago, but it told a different story of a character that I never really heard about before or was not that focused on, and now I really can't wait to see him again. But I want to focus more on 99% of the things that I disagree with this guy on.
Mr. Fantastic, the white guy, and he's being played by Pedro Pascal. It's in his name. Amigo, sorry to break it to you, but you're not Reed Richards. We have to bring in Pedro Pascal, where everything he touches turns to woke. The Last of Us, a game series that already sucked crap, was adapted into a TV show, and Pedro Pascal, our main Mexican man, got to come in and play Joel, a character who was also white. It's like his job to come in and take a normal white character and just turn him Mexican. Who'll know the difference? A lot of people will, because you're nowhere near Reed Richards.
First things first, Pedro Pascal is Chilean. Calling him Mexican is like calling Conor McGregor British or Scottish, you know? Yeah, they're in similar regions of the world, but their history and culture are pretty different. It's also kind of weird that he's using Mexican as an insult. Like, I mean, I just don't understand that either.
Oh yeah, and P.S. if Pedro Pascal is playing Mr. Fantastic, I just want to ask, what's he really fantastic at? Cleaning houses or jumping over the border? And if you got a problem, go complain to your boyfriend.
Guys, I have a confession. I laughed a little bit at this, you know. I'm not proud of it. Yes, you can boo me all you want, but it's just I didn't even really laugh at the joke. I laughed at the whole package of everything that he just said and showed us. I'm gonna assume that this guy is Irish just from his strong accent, and it's just crazy to me that like out of everything that you could have consumed from America, it was these like political talking points. It's just crazy to me, right? Maybe he's currently living in America, maybe he moved from Ireland to America, I don't know. He looks like 15 years old, but it's just wild to me, especially this like whole kill a commie for mommy. Like, what is this, the Cold War? Are we living in the 70s and 80s? Like, I don't know. The more I hear this man talk, the more I feel like he's he just doesn't like comic books anymore. I don't know, maybe he should just get a new hobby. Or if he feels like modern day comic books are so bad, maybe he can make his own. I would love to see what his stories would look like, since he thinks he can do such a better job at it. He also goes on to talk about like comic book accuracy, which you think would be like a very factual statement, but somehow he makes it objective and opinionated.
Now to the comic accuracy. People are losing their mind going, oh, they gave Ben Grimm a trench coat. Oh, they have the original blue suits. Well, in that department, you're entirely incorrect. So let's just have a look at these comic accurate suits and let's see how accurate they really are. So here we have the insanely comic accurate Fantastic Four First Steps costumes. And here we have the original real comic accurate costumes. What on earth are these people smoking? How does a Mexican Reed Richards and a comic inaccurate costume and a gender swapped Silver Surfer correlate to some comic accurate masterpiece? I have the answer. It doesn't.
I don't know, man. These suits look pretty comic book accurate to me. At least a lot more accurate than the other Fantastic Four movies that we got in the past. He also has an issue with the female Silver Surfer, making it seem as if she hasn't been in the comic book for decades and has multiple appearances since then. And like, speaking of comic book accuracy, not everything has to be a one-to-one exact copy of the source material. Like, for example, Infinity War and Endgame were following the Infinity Gauntlet comic book storyline, or at least it was heavily inspired by that. It wasn't a perfect one-to-one retelling of that story, you know? Thanos' motivation in the comic books was because of a love interest named Death. In the movie, it's because of his own backstory and history, which I think was quite compelling too. The movie still captured the whole Mad Titan persona pretty well. Also, in the Infinity Gauntlet comic storyline, Adam Warlock was basically the hero with Nebula too. In the Endgame, it was basically Tony Stark, which for the whole context of the MCU was perfect in my opinion. This saga started with Iron Man, it low-key ended with Iron Man. Plus it showed a lot of character growth. In the beginning of the Infinity War or in Endgame, Tony seemed like a very selfish guy who wasn't willing to give up his current life because he had something worth fighting for, something a lot more important worth fighting for. But the ending kind of showed a lot of character growth, saying that he's willing to sacrifice his new family for the greater good of everyone in the universe. And even though the movies didn't do a one-to-one exact copy of the source material, you could say it did it justice still. You can even make an argument that it went above and beyond. There are certain things in the comic books I feel like should stay in the comic books, you know, like that whole incest storyline between Wanda and Quicksilver. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need that on the big picture. Same thing with the whole like Deathstroke and Tara love relationship, which was kind of weird in the comic books because at the time Tara was like 14 or 16 years old trying to hook up with a 30-year-old plus man. Ew. And I say the word trying. I think it was implied that they actually did a couple of times.
Ugh. Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
So yeah, stuff like that should be staying in the comic books, just like the whole like racist sidekick superhero, which I'm sure people like him would probably like to see. But certain things that were made in the past should stay in the past because we as a society have grown to be more accepting of humans in general and have left our societal flaws in the past, or at least they should stay in the past in my opinion, even though it feels like we still have some work to do.
You say I'm scared of black people. Newsflash, you illiterate troglodyte. Everybody is.
The best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people.
You can't stop looting and burning countries to the ground. Create an argument. You actually have to make some valid points. You can't just dance around throwing your arms up in the air, making weird noises like you did. It makes you look like a Neanderthal who hasn't picked up a comic except Watchmen in his entire life.
I mean, I don't know who needs to hear this, but black people don't have a monopoly on riots. It's a very human thing. I'm not justifying it. I think it's a really wrong thing to mess up people's property, you know? I think there's better ways of protesting and getting your point across, but it's still a very human thing to pillage and go through places. You know, I grew up in a very Christian household. I've had debates with people, and a lot of people bring up the Christian Crusades, which, you know, if you look back at it, it was pretty messed up, right? Same thing with the Vikings. Like, the Vikings were a very violent group of white people. Killing and war was ingrained in their culture and religion, right? And you don't even have to go in the past. Fans of Philadelphia trash their cities every time their sports teams win. And if you look at the footage, it's a lot of white people doing it. Turkey, not that long ago, was looking very post-apocalyptic, you know? Rioting is not just for one group of people. Even if you look at the Black Lives Matter protests, there was a lot of white, Hispanic, and Asian people just acting up. So like, this whole point of just making it seem like black people are the only violent group of people out there in the world is just so wrong. And this is just like a theory of mine, that people are more likely to do violent things if they have like a scarcity mindset, which basically kind of explains what the Vikings did in the past, as well as people who are like under the poverty line. Of course, this is just a theory of mine. Poverty and crime do go hand in hand. There is a correlation there. There's no proven causation, but the correlation there is pretty strong. Also, I feel like this guy just doesn't like anything new that's coming out with comics in general. I feel like he should just get a new hobby. And that becomes very clear with the Absolute Universe, which is a alternative universe, kind of like Marvel's What If, but a lot more fleshed out, and a retelling of like iconic superheroes, backstories, and motivations. Basically redefining characters, and I've been loving it. It's been so long since I actually cared about a Superman story. Like, I haven't cared about this character since like All-Star Superman.
His mother tries to help him out, saying, "Man, just go outside." And then, wouldn't you know it, he starts screaming into her face. This might be some sort of habit for this universe's Bruce Wayne. When you don't like something, flip out like a retard and start yelling and cursing. What happened to this?
This YouTuber is basically doing the exact same thing that he's criticizing young Bruce Wayne of doing. This individual is crying over a fictional character. He's also calling Bruce Wayne a transgendered as an insult, which also doesn't make any sense, because based on what I've been reading, it seems like Bruce Wayne was born a guy and he is still a guy. I don't know.
It has horrible, edgy dialogue. It has some pretty gay character designs. And if you can believe it, they managed to race swap another redhead from comic books.
Also, this panel of Bruce with a flower is him giving it to his mother. Now, fellas, is it wrong to show affection and love to your mom? No, it's not wrong. This guy is just so far deep gone, bro. Like, I feel like he grew up on the Sneakos, Nick Fuentes, and Andrew Tates, and his whole perception of like reality is just so weird. He really hates the fact that this character is now black, and it also seems like just the sight of a black person upsets him.
See that Giancarlo Esposito says he wants to play Mr. Freeze in the DCU. No, he's black. I don't think I can get across how truly stupid this is. You sucked in Breaking Bad, you sucked in Captain America, and you sucked in Star Wars. And you can't play Mr. Freeze because you're black.
I personally think he would do a great Mr. Freeze. I can legitimately see him being one. Mainly because like Mr. Freeze's like whole character isn't based off the fact that he's white. Like, Mr. Freeze's motivations, character development, and history has nothing to do with the color of his skin. And plus, Giancarlo Esposito is a phenomenal actor. He was also really good in Breaking Bad. I don't know what he was talking about. I guess this guy just has horrible taste in fiction. To be fair, there are certain characters who are like quote unquote white that would be kind of weird for them to be race swapped. Like, if Matt Murdock was ever race swapped, I think that would be wrong, because a lot of his character development and who he is because he's Irish Catholic. I feel like race swapping someone like that would be kind of wrong. Same thing with Magneto. Probably shouldn't race swap Magneto. Kamala Khan as well. Like, certain characters shouldn't be race swapped. Same thing with Doctor Doom. He's based on like Romani culture, you know, even though the past two like Fantastic Four movies, Doctor Doom hasn't really been portrayed as Romani. He's just been portrayed as an American, and there hasn't been any outrage about that. So that's kind of interesting too. And I wonder if Tony Stark is going to have a Romani accent, you know? People kind of forget that Scarlet Witch had a very European accent, and that's all but gone now. I mean, I guess with legacy characters, maybe they could be a different race, but even then, like, I'm not the biggest fan of legacy characters. I'll probably do a video on that later. I think the strongest reason for race swapping is the fact that a lot of these stories were written in the past, so there weren't as many black characters back then as now, and Hollywood just wants to be more inclusive, so they're trying to like swap race of characters who aren't that impactful to show like more representation on the big screen. which I think comes from like a good place, but the execution of it has been pretty poor, especially when it comes to the writing of these characters. But like race swapping with certain characters are okay. Some things are not, kind of like with the whole Professor Snape issue in Harry Potter right now. Like me personally, I don't really care about Harry Potter, mainly because I didn't grow up with it. In my Christian household, anything Harry Potter related was seen as witchcraft. It was a no-no. But I've seen people talk about how Professor Snape is described as a very pale-skinned individual with greasy black hair who was bullied because of his appearance. Like yeah, you can say that being black, the character was also bullied, but at the same time, I just don't like the fact that a character who is described as hideously ugly is being portrayed by a black person. That's just weird. Also, the director said that this will be a faithful adaptation of the Harry Potter movies, which I feel like you low-key might have to walk back now with this casting. So there's certain things that I feel like we should like calm down when it comes to race swapping. Like there's a fine line between it. And at the end of the day, I'm not even the biggest fan of race swapping. I like the idea of just telling original stories of these characters instead of just race swapping them to fill a quota. Stop being lazy, Hollywood. And while we're on the topic of writing original characters, I wouldn't mind Isaiah Bradley and Old Man Cap teaming up, you know, kind of like Lethal Weapon style. I feel like that's a very cool and exciting story that could be told. And like I did mention this earlier with the whole like redhead things, where another word for redhead is ginger. You rearrange the words of ginger, you get the N word, hard R. And at first you might have said it was just a coincidence. Now it feels like it's on purpose. It feels like there's a bunch of weirdos in Hollywood laughing in the background saying we got another monkey to do their bidding. And with a lot of these race swap characters, it feels like they're setting them up to fail. Hollywood can write black actors and characters pretty well. We've seen it with Black Panther in Civil War, Avengers, and his own movie. Same thing with Michael B. Jordan when it came to Killmonger and Creed. Basically, the whole cast of Snowfall was amazing. Again, these were original characters, not race swap characters. Why not continue to follow that trend? Like Static Shock could legitly be DC's version of like Black Panther / Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Whether you guys want to do a live action version of it or an animated movie style of it. Like, honestly, DC, you guys stay dropping the balls with these amazing characters. Yes, they're not popular, but Iron Man was also a B/C list hero before his movie, and now he's as well known as the X-Men. And I'm glad in the new movie that they're introducing Mr. Terrific, even though I don't think the character in general is a cool looking character, but hey, baby steps. I would still prefer the likes of Static Shock. Same thing with Marvel. You have so many cool characters, like the guys who can communicate with the universe. Put them in the movies. Overall, I think this kid or guy or whatever is pretty weird. I think he needs to get off the internet for a couple of years because it's definitely rotting his brain and his perception of the world. Like, just hearing him speak, it feels like he just doesn't like comic books anymore, and he's forcing himself to go through it. Maybe he should get a new hobby and touch grass. Me personally, I just want more original stories. That's just how I feel. Again, race swapping isn't the worst thing imaginable, but original characters and stories are better, in my opinion. At least the cool ones. And a lot of things I said today are just my opinion. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with them. As always, stay safe, be a KDA warrior, and I'll see you later.